I was feeling actually a little bit sick yesterday, but I told my mom, I'm feeling better now, and I told my mom, there's no way I would miss this. This is too important for me. I've got some things to say that I think would help a lot of you. So, most of you I don't know, and I'm gonna kind of go off what Bob said a little bit to tell a little bit more about my story and what I've been through to get to where I'm at today. So, a little over 3 years ago, I was in after my track season ended, me and three of my closest friends were involved in a car wreck on I-70 in Kansas. We were rear-ended at over 70 miles an hour by a drunk driver. And in the wreck, I suffered a broken neck. My broken C5 vertebrae pressed against and bruised my spinal cord, which paralyzed me from just about the shoulders down. Prior to this, I was running over 50 miles a week as my school's top cross-country runner and getting ready to go into the next season ranked first in my region as a junior. My goal that season was to make a case for myself and be able to prove that I was fast enough to run Division I in college. I was hoping to get a scholarship that way. That was the plan, at least, until that rainy day in Kansas, where I had to take a flight for life from Russell to Wichita, which is over 1,300 miles from home, alone as a 16-year-old, where I had to have a surgery to remove the broken vertebrae from my neck. That surgery most likely ended up saving my life. The doctor told me and my family that after the surgery, that from this point on, there would be no guarantees of what would happen. There was a chance that I would never move again. But the good news is that I had feeling in my whole body, and my mom and I knew that, God willing, I was going to make a full recovery. I was going to run again. I spent 31 days in the ICU fighting for my life, during which I wasn't able to eat or drink anything because I was trached. I couldn't breathe on my own without the assistance of a ventilator. And because of the trach, I also spent most of that time not even being able to speak. After a long month, eventually I was deemed stable enough to be flown back to Colorado, where I was admitted into Craig Hospital. And there I would begin the long journey of rehab, where I had to relearn how to do everything in my life. Things that most people can do without any thought or effort now took all of my focus and all of my attention. Since that day 3 years ago, God has given me countless victories in my recovery. It started with just being able to breathe on my own again without the ventilator. Then I got more movement in my arms, a twitch in my finger, a twitch in my toe. And day by day, I've continued to improve. Often a lot slower than I would have liked to be progressing, but progressing nonetheless to get to where I'm at today, walking with a cane, with plans of ditching this cane soon to be able to walk without any assistive devices. I believe that God is still providing those daily wins and that the biggest victories and miracles are still yet to come. And I still believe that I'm going to run it. While preparing to speak to you all, I thought a lot about the concept of optimism, and I realized how much optimism has helped me in my recovery. I'm extremely blessed because I've had countless individuals and groups of people that have gone above and beyond and helped me get those daily improvements. I've also worked extremely hard in hours and hours of PT, constantly trying to push myself to strive forward and get stronger, even when I'm feeling the pain and discomfort in most of those moments. But the thing that I believe has helped propel me closer to my goals more than anything else is my mindset. More specifically, my ability to do two things: to constantly seek out good and to consistently be able to change my perspective on the challenges that lie in front of me. With this mindset, in my situation, I've done more than what many people believe possible. But I also believe that anyone can implement this way of thinking in their own lives to not just be a more optimistic person, but also to be able to overcome any challenge that stands in their way. Today I want to help you be able to do just that. Implement those two ways of thinking into your own life. The first of which is to always seek out the good. For me personally, I like to call seeking out the good finding your wins. While in the ICU, when it seemed like everything was going wrong, my dad told me, "Noble, you have to find a way to win the day." What he meant by that was that every day, no matter what had happened or how bad things seemed to have gotten, I had to find something I could do that would be a step of forward progress. I had to find a win that day. This was always my way of finding the good. There were days where the wins were huge and noticeable, hard to miss. Days when I got the first contractions in my legs, or saying my first words after not being able to speak for so long. But there was a countless number of days when those wins were small, hard to notice, wins that seemed like they weren't there, or that they didn't affect much. I had to trust that those small wins were adding up. I learned that those small wins are like atoms, and even though I couldn't necessarily see them, I knew that they were making up everything around me. My job was to find that win. No matter how many negative things were happening around me, I had to find something positive that I could end the day with. This way of thinking is something that you can implement in every area of your life. When things are going good, it'll be easier to find that win, to find the good. It's harder when things are going bad. What it takes is active optimism. Active optimism doesn't mean you just sit back, relax, and hope that everything works out for good. Active optimism is when you do things on purpose in order to get that daily win. This could be waking up early in order to set yourself up best for success that day. It could be journaling before you go to bed so that you have a better understanding of your day and its highs and its lows. It could also mean choosing to avoid unnecessary conflict and drama so that your mind is better able to focus on more uplifting things. It takes a lot of discipline, but when you practice active optimism, you set yourself up best for not just success and future wins, but also to have a better, more positive outlook on life. The thing about active optimism, though, is that it takes energy. It takes a conscious effort to choose to find the good and choose to do good things, even when things may not be going good around you. But in order to stay positive through more of your day, you have to find a way to unconsciously seek out that good. For me, this starts first in your belief about the world. Anais Nin once said, "We don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are." The world is the way that you think it is. This is also known as confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is the term for the human tendency to only seek out, recall, and interpret information that supports one's pre-existing beliefs or values. In other words, the mind is constantly seeking out information to prove that your beliefs about certain events and situations are correct. In nearly everything you do, your mind is unconsciously practicing confirmation bias, whether you like it or not. This can be very negative and detrimental, but it can also be extremely positive. If you go shopping with the idea that every time you go to check out, the cashier that you have is rude, your mind will unconsciously seek out that rude cashier to prove to yourself that you're right. Every cashier you have is rude. But the opposite is true if you always go to the store thinking that you have great cashiers. Your mind will seek out proof of what you believe. Because of confirmation bias, whether you tell yourself you'll have an awful day when you leave the house in the morning, or you tell yourself you'll have a great day, more often than not, you're going to be right. While studying about this concept, I realized something, and it's the fact that we as humans have a lot more control over the things that happen around us than we realize. I don't mean that we have the ability to literally control outside events or prevent the bad things from happening to us. I mean that we have the ability to focus on all the good that's happening around us without consciously thinking about it. A pessimist will unconsciously focus on the bad things that happen around them because they believe that the bad things always happen to them. This is the opposite. The opposite is true for an optimist. An optimist, because they believe that the world is good, will always be trying to find proof that the world is good, that people are good, that good things happen to them. An optimist mind is always trying to prove. Sometimes this is really hard to do, or you may not even be doing it. But if you want to believe that the world is good, if you want to see good things happen around you, then you first have to believe that it's there. It may take active optimism at first, because your brain may not be used to thinking this way, to always seeking out the good and finding those daily wins. But as you do it more and more, eventually it becomes a habit, and soon you'll see good in the world without even realizing it. This is why optimism is so important. The ancient Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal nearly 2,000 years ago, "Our life is what our thoughts make it." That still holds true today. An optimist's mind literally changes the world around them into a more positive place by shifting your focus onto those positive things that are happening around you. As you do this, as you continue to think this way more often, it'll get easier and easier to find that win, to find the good, even when it seems like you're having a bad day. You have to find that win. The second thing that I have that helps me on my path to success is the ability to change my perspective on the challenges in front of me. Marcus Aurelius also wrote, "You have the power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Sometimes, no matter how hard we try, to stay happy, it seems that everything that can go wrong does go wrong. I think a common misconception about optimism is that in order to be an optimist, you must always be happy, and you must always see everything as a good thing. I disagree. Multiple times I've said that you have to find the good even when bad is happening all around you. That's because if you haven't noticed, in life, bad things tend to happen. As much as you try to only see the good, eventually you're going to come face to face with some negative stuff. It's a fact of life, and it's unhealthy to just try and ignore it or act as if it's all a good thing. I believe instead that optimists acknowledge that the bad things are there, but then they change their perspective on them. Because no one can stop the bad things from happening, but everyone has control over their thoughts and opinions to be able to change that perspective into something that can benefit them. My friends and I like to get together every now and then to play one of my favorite games, which is poker.
All right.
In poker, you're only dealt 2 cards, and with those 2 cards and the 5 community cards on the board, you have to make the best possible hand that you can. While we play, we like to add this fun side game called the 7 deuce game. You see, the worst 2 cards that you can be dealt in poker is a 7 and a 2. Of all 1,326 possible hands, these cards statistically have the lowest odds of being a winning hand. In the 7 deuce game, the objective is to win with this very hand, despite it being the worst one in the game. If you do win with it, you'll win a little bit of extra money because everyone at the table has to give you a few more chips. Every time we play and you're dealt a 7 and a 2, rather than folding it right away, being disappointed that you were just dealt the worst hand in the game, you shift your perspective and you start to get a little bit excited. Even though it's a horrible hand, You have the opportunity now to make even more money than you could have without it. You start to treat the hand like it's a great hand. And when everyone else can sense the confidence you have, they tend to fold because they think your cards are better than theirs. It's a fun side game, but I tell you this because in life, like in poker, you're not always going to be dealt the best hand. We don't get pocket aces every time. Sometimes you're even going to be dealt what seems like the worst hand. We don't play the game acting like the 7-deuce is a great hand. We actually do the opposite. We acknowledge that it's a horrible hand, and we reward those who are able to pull off a win with it. In life, what happens when you change your perspective is you start to realize that even though you're dealt what seems like the worst hand, you can not only win with it, but possibly win more than you ever could have without it. You may not win a cash prize in life, but you develop resilience and grit, traits that can be bought. In my own situation, no one is denying that the fact that this injury was a devastating, tragic event that happened in my life. I'm definitely not denying that, and I'll even be the first to admit that this injury sucks. It's awful, and I'm going through hard stuff most of the time. But rather than standing up here and telling you about how this injury ruined my life, I'm up here to tell you that I now have the greatest opportunity to develop those million-dollar traits that can only be built through adversity. I have the greatest opportunity to practice virtue despite the hardest of circumstances. And I have the opportunity to show the world and myself how I can overcome these impossible challenges. That's what optimism does for me, and that's what it can do for you too. It's taken lots of hard work to get to where I'm at today in my recovery from this injury. It's taken a lot of help from a lot of people, but the most important tool that helps me in my day-to-day life is my mind. And I believe that anyone can obtain this mindset. You build it when the challenges of life come, by always thinking positive, so that when you go into situations, your mind automatically focuses on the good. By always finding a daily win and seeking out the good, and by changing your perspective on the hand that you dealt so that you can make it a winning hand. I'll leave you with this. Optimism doesn't exist because the world is 100% good and without trouble. Optimism exists because bad things happen. Just as light can exist without darkness, or sound without silence, the good can exist without the bad. Sometimes it seems like the world is out to get you. Sometimes it seems like everything that can go wrong is going wrong. And it's so hard to believe in good when everything around you seems so bad. But in those low moments, in the challenges of life, optimism is born by choosing to believe that the good is there, even when it's nearly impossible to find. Thank you so much.